Your soulmate is bursting into tears because they finally realized, you are not who they thought you were. Beloved soul, there you are, and please know that heaven has guided these words to you, at this exact hour, because something has shifted, somewhere, in the heart of someone connected to your very soul. A veil has lifted. A truth that was hidden in plain sight for far too long has finally broken through, and it has brought a flood of feeling with it. You may have sensed it without understanding it. A strange softening in the air, a sudden stillness in a situation that had felt frozen, a feeling that something you had given up waiting for had quietly begun to move. You did not imagine that. The soul senses these shifts long before the mind can explain them, and heaven has brought you here tonight to tell you what that shift truly is, and what it means for the road ahead of you. It is late where you are. Later perhaps, than you meant to still be awake. The world has gone quiet around you. The particular kind of quiet that only arrives when everyone else has surrendered to sleep. And it is just you, and the long ache you have carried, and now this stillness in which heaven can finally be heard. You did not arrive at this moment by accident. You did not stumble onto this message through some random and meaningless sequence of events. The soul is never led by randomness, and your soul was led here, gently and deliberately, to receive something it has been waiting a very long time to hear. So stay with me, beloved soul, stay through every word, because what heaven wants to reveal tonight is not a small thing. It is a turning point. Heaven has been watching over your journey, not in the cold and distant way we sometimes imagine, when we picture the divine, looking down from somewhere far above us, but in the close, intimate, deeply personal way that a loving presence watches over someone it cherishes beyond all measure. Every moment you spent feeling unseen, every time you offered the truest part of yourself, and watched it be received as something smaller than it was. Every quiet evening you wondered whether anyone would ever truly understand the depth of what you carry. All of it has been seen. All of it has been heard. All of it has been held in a love so patient and so vast that it exists far beyond the reach of human understanding. You believed you were waiting alone to be recognized. You were never waiting alone. Heaven has been with you in every overlooked hour, already seeing what others were so slow to see, already loving what others were too unready to love. The person connected to your soul is weeping, not the quiet, contained sadness of an ordinary disappointment, but the deep, shaking, unguarded weeping that comes only when a person finally sees clearly what they had refused, or failed, to see for so long. Something has cracked open in them. The carefully held assumptions, the comfortable misunderstandings, the convenient and incomplete picture they had of you. All of it has given way at once, the way a dam gives way, and behind it was a truth they were not prepared to feel with such force. They have realized that you are not who they thought you were. And the realizing has undone them. Let heaven show you something you were not there to witness, a moment that unfolded in a room you have never seen. It was an ordinary evening, or it began as one. Nothing announced itself, and then something small arrived. A memory surfacing unbidden, an object that still carried your presence. A silence in their life, shaped exactly like the space you used to fill, and in that small and unremarkable moment, the whole truth came for them at once. They saw suddenly everything they had failed to see. They felt the absence of something they had never properly named while they had it. They understood, with a clarity that left no room to hide, that the person they had taken so lightly was the very person they could least afford to lose, and it broke them. They did not see it coming, and they could not stop it once it came, and they wept the way people weep only when the truth has finally outrun every defense they built against it. That moment was not arranged by you. You did not force it, you did not earn it through any final act of proving yourself. You did not have to perform one more time to make them understand. It arrived on its own, in heaven's timing, precisely when their heart had finally grown ready to receive what had been true the entire time. This is how recognition almost always comes. Not through argument, not through pleading, not through the exhausting work of making someone see, but suddenly, quietly, in an unguarded moment, when the soul finally lowers its guard enough to let the truth walk in. Heaven wants you to understand what has happened in the heart of the one connected to you. You have lived under the weight of being misunderstood. You have known, in the deep and lonely way, that only the misjudged can know, that the person who should have seen you most clearly, was seeing only a fraction of you, and judging you by that fraction. They mistook your gentleness for weakness. They mistook your patience for a lack of fire. They mistook your quiet for shallowness, your calm for indifference, your willingness to give for something that could simply be taken for granted, without consequence. They built an idea of you that was smaller than the truth, and then they related to the idea instead of to the person, and you felt it. You felt yourself being loved or not loved, as a version of you that was never really you at all. Heaven has seen what that did to you. The exhaustion of being constantly underestimated. The particular grief of pouring out your depth before someone who kept reaching for only the surface. The slow, wearing pain of being treated as less than you are, by the very person you longed to be fully known by. There is a unique loneliness in that. The loneliness of being physically present, yet truly unseen, of standing close to someone and still feeling unmet, of being loved as a smaller version of yourself, while the fullness of who you are goes quietly unrecognized. It is a loneliness that can be harder to bear than simple absence, because it wears the costume of connection, while withholding the substance of it. And you bore it. For a long time, you bore it with a grace that asked for nothing, and complained to no one. You began, perhaps, to wonder whether the fault was yours, whether you were too much, or not enough, or somehow failing to communicate the truth of who you were. You replayed your own words, searching for where you might have been clearer. You softened yourself further, trying to be more easily understood, and in the softening, you began to disappear. Heaven watched all of this. Every moment of it has been seen. Every moment of it has been held, and heaven wants to say to you now, with absolute clarity, the failure to see you was never your failure, it was theirs, and now at last, that failure is being corrected, because here is what has happened in the heart of the one connected to you. The whole picture arrived at once. Sometimes a person can carry a wrong idea of someone for years, defended by habit and protected by distance, and then a single moment cracks it open, a memory that returns with new meaning, a comparison that reveals what they had, a silence that finally taught them what your presence had always given them. And in that moment, the truth of you came rushing in all at once, more vast, and more beautiful, and more irreplaceable, than the small idea they had been holding. They realized you were not the simple, easy, replaceable presence they had assumed. They realized your gentleness was strength all along. They realized your patience was a depth they had mistaken for weakness. They realized that the very things they overlooked in you were the rarest things they will ever encounter. And the weight of that realization, The grief of how long it took them to arrive at it broke them open into tears. These are not idle tears, beloved soul, these are the tears of recognition. They are the tears a person cries when the scales fall from their eyes, and they see, suddenly and completely, the value of what they had been treating carelessly. There is a particular agony in that kind of seeing, the agony of understanding, too late or almost too late, that what you were holding so loosely was a treasure all along. That is what is moving through them. The dawning, painful, undeniable awareness that you were never who they thought you were, that you were always so much more, and that they had nearly let that go without ever truly knowing it. Let heaven help you understand why people fail to see clearly for so long, because this understanding will protect your heart from bitterness. We rarely see others as they truly are. We see them through the lens of our own fears, our own assumptions, our own readiness or unreadiness to receive what is in front of us. A person who is not yet ready to recognize depth will look directly at depth and see only its surface. A person who has not yet learned the value of gentleness will stand in the presence of profound gentleness and feel only its quietness, mistaking the quiet for the absence of something, rather than the presence of everything. It was never that you failed to be visible, it was that they had not yet developed the eyes to see you, and eyes can only develop in their own time, through their own seasons, often through the very loss or distance, that finally teaches them what they were looking at all along. So the distance you grieved, the silence that wounded you, the season in which you felt unseen and undervalued, heaven is showing you now that it was not wasted, and it was not the rejection you feared. It was the very thing that was teaching this person to see. Your absence became the lesson. Their presence with you never could. In the space your distance created, the idea of you they had been clinging to began to dissolve, and the truth of you began to emerge in its place. They started to feel what they had not let themselves feel, while you were near and easy to take for granted. And that feeling has now overwhelmed them, and broken them open, and brought them to these tears. You may wonder why heaven would allow such a long delay, why you should have had to endure the ache of being misjudged for so long before the seeing finally came. But heaven does not waste a single moment of what you endure, and there was a purpose woven through even the waiting. Had they recognized you too soon, before their own heart was ready, the recognition would have been shallow, a passing appreciation that faded as quickly as it came. It is the very length of the season, the very depth of the absence, that has made this realization unshakable. They are not noticing you lightly now, they are being undone by the full weight of a truth they can no longer escape, and that kind of seeing only comes through exactly the kind of season you walked through. What felt like being overlooked was, in heaven's hands, the slow and necessary work of preparing a heart to finally behold you completely. The waiting was never punishment, it was preparation, theirs and yours. But now, beloved soul, heaven must walk you toward the deeper truth, the one this entire message has been moving toward, the one that matters more than any tears another person could ever cry. Their realization, as real and as moving as it is not what makes you valuable. Their tears do not create your worth, they only recognize it. You were always exactly who you are now being seen to be. You did not become more precious the moment they finally noticed. You were that precious in every overlooked hour, in every underestimated moment, in every day you were treated as less than you are. Their seeing changes their world. It does not change the truth of you, because the truth of you was never in question to begin with. This is the freedom heaven most wants to give you tonight. You have been waiting to be recognized. You have been aching for the moment when the one you longed for would finally see you and understand what they had. And that moment is arriving, and heaven rejoices with you in it. But heaven does not want you to mistake their recognition for the source of your worth. Because if you do, you will spend the rest of your life dependent on the eyes of others to tell you who you are. Your value was never on loan from their perception, was never granted by their attention, and it was never diminished by their blindness. It was settled, long before they ever opened their eyes, by the one who has always seen you completely, because here is the truth beneath the truth. Before this person ever wept over the realization of who you are, you were already fully known and fully loved by heaven itself. Every depth they are only now discovering was already seen. Every strength they mistook for weakness was already honored. Every quiet gift they overlooked was already treasured by the one who made you, and has never once looked at you through a clouded lens. All of it has been seen, all of it has been known, all of it has been loved without condition and without delay, from the very beginning, by a presence that never needed time or distance or loss to recognize your worth. Their tears are the sound of a human heart, finally catching up to what heaven has known about you all along. And there is a realization heaven longs for you to have that matters even more than the one moving through them tonight. It is your own, the moment when you finally see yourself, the way heaven has always seen you. When you stop waiting to be recognized in order to feel real. When you stop measuring your worth by who noticed it, and who didn't, who valued it, and who threw it away. When you look at the gentleness in you and call it strength, look at the patience in you and call it depth, look at the love you have given so freely and call it the rare and beautiful thing it has always been, rather than evidence that you should have given less, that is the realization that changes your life from the inside, and it does not require anyone else's tears to arrive. It only requires you to agree, at last, with the truth. Heaven has been speaking over you since before you were born. And let heaven be specific about what that inner recognition looks like, because it is not a single dramatic moment, but a steady, quiet returning. It looks like catching yourself about to apologize for your own depth, and choosing instead to honor it. It looks like remembering all the times you gave more than you received, and feeling, for the first time, not foolish but proud. Proud of a heart generous enough to love without keeping score. It looks like standing in front of the mirror of your own life, and finally seeing what heaven sees. Not the small, overlooked, easily depicted figure that others' blindness convinced you to believe in, but a soul of rare and genuine substance, the kind that does not come along often, the kind that the world is slow to recognize precisely because it is so much more than the world expects. The tragedy was never that you lacked worth. The tragedy was only that you forgot it, and tonight, heaven is helping you remember. You spent so long trying to be seen by eyes that were not yet ready to see. Heaven is inviting you now to turn that longing inward, to become, for yourself, the witness you waited so long for others to be. Because a soul that has truly recognized its own worth can never again be made small by anyone's failure to recognize it. That is the unshakable ground heaven wants beneath your feet, not the shifting sand of being noticed, but the bedrock of knowing. Now let heaven speak gently about the one whose heart has broken open tonight, because your concern for them is itself a sign of the depth, they are only now learning to see, the tears they are crying are genuine. This is not a passing sentiment, not a fleeting moment of nostalgia that will fade by morning. This is the kind of seeing that does not unsee itself. Once a person has truly recognized what you are, once the veil has lifted, and the full truth has come rushing in, they cannot return to the comfortable smallness of their old idea of you. The realization has changed them. It has rearranged something fundamental in the way they understand their own life, their own choices, their own heart, and a person changed by that kind of seeing carries it with them. It does not leave. The feelings rising in them now are the ones they spent so long not allowing themselves to feel. Genuine recognition, when it finally comes, brings with it the full weight of everything that was suppressed alongside it. Every overlooked moment of love, every disregarded act of care, every time you were there in a way they did not let themselves fully receive. All of it returns at once, and it is overwhelming, and it is humbling, and it is breaking them open. That breaking is not a small thing, beloved soul. People are remade by moments like this. The realization that they nearly missed you, nearly let you go, nearly lived their whole life without ever truly knowing the depth of what they had. That realization does not produce a shrug. It produces tears. It produces transformation, and it produces a longing to make right what was nearly lost. So do not let fear take hold of your heart during this season. Even now, even as something you longed for is arriving, there is something. Heaven wants you to understand about why their tears run so deep, and it touches the very heart of what you have been told tonight. They have realized that you are not replaceable. For a time they may have believed, somewhere beneath their awareness, that what you offered could be found elsewhere, that your particular gentleness, your particular depth, your particular way of loving was common enough to be set down and recovered later from someone else. And then they looked, and they could not find it. They reached for it in other places, and came back empty. Because the truth they have finally collided with is that you were never one of many. You were singular. The combination of all that you are has never existed before, and will never exist again, and a soul of that kind cannot be exchanged or duplicated or replaced. That is the recognition undoing them. Not merely that you were good, but that you were irreplaceable, and that they very nearly lived their whole life without understanding it. Let that truth settle into you, beloved soul, not as pride, but as a quiet and steadying fact. You are not, and have never been, a person the world can simply find another of. The purpose is clarity, and clarity is one of the greatest gifts any soul can receive. You now understand what you could not understand before, that you were never the small thing they once treated you as, that the failure to see you was never your failure, that your worth was real in every unseen moment, and that the recognition now arriving is simply the truth catching up to itself. From that clarity, real peace becomes possible. Not the fragile peace of finally being noticed, which could always be lost again. The deep and unshakable peace of knowing your worth was never dependent on being noticed in the first place. And so heaven asks of you the only thing it ever truly asks: trust. Not a passive, resigned trust that simply waits to see whether their tears will lead anywhere. An active, living, breathing trust that says, I believe the truth of who I am is being revealed, in them and in me, and I believe that what is meant for me is being drawn toward me by a timing wiser than my own. Because beneath the surface of this moment, heaven is at work in ways no human realization could ever fully account for. Hearts are being opened, Eyes are being cleared. A story that seemed to have ended in misunderstanding is being rewritten in recognition. Trust heaven's timing, even when it feels unbearably slow. Even now, when something has finally moved, do not rush to force the next part of the story. Trust that the realization arriving in them is unfolding on a divine schedule that knows exactly when each piece should fall into place. The seeing came at the moment it could be received. What follows the seeing will come, at the moment it can be received as well. Heaven does not hurry, and heaven does not force, but heaven is patient in a way that is absolute, and that patience always arrives at the same destination. Heaven's timing is never late, even when it appears to be. It is always, always, always precisely on time. Trust the path before you, even when you cannot see where it leads. Faith was never the ability to see the whole road stretched out clearly ahead of you. Faith is the willingness to take the next single step in the light you have already been given. And the light of this moment is showing you enough. It is showing you that you were always more than you were seen to be. It is showing you that the misunderstanding was never the final word. It is showing you that you are being recognized at last, both by another heart and, if you will allow it, by your own. It is showing you that you are held, known, and treasured by a love that never once misjudged you, and never will. Trust that what is truly yours is making its way toward you, carried by this very awakening, and that nothing genuine is lost, simply because it took time to be seen. You do not have to convince anyone of your worth now. You do not have to prove the depth they overlooked. The proving is over. The truth has spoken for itself, and it has brought a soul to tears in the speaking. Your only task now is to remain rooted in who you have always been, to keep standing in the truth of yourself, and to let the recognition that is arriving find you already whole, already at peace, already certain of your own worth, with or without anyone else's eyes to confirm it. And heaven wants to offer you one gentle word of guidance for what comes next. Because this moment carries a quiet test within it. When recognition finally arrives after a long season of feeling unseen, there is a temptation to rush toward it from a place of relief, to grasp at it from the old ache, to receive it as though it were water, and you had been dying of thirst. Heaven asks you to receive it differently, not from need, but from wholeness. Let the one who is awakening come toward the truth of you, but let them come to a person who already knows that truth, who no longer requires their tears to feel real, who can welcome their recognition as a gift, rather than clutch at it as a rescue. There is a vast difference between being received back by someone who is desperate to be valued, and being met by someone who has already come home to their own worth. The second is unshakable. The second cannot be wounded again the way the first can. Heaven wants that unshakable ground beneath you before any door reopens, so that whatever you build from here is built on the rock of knowing, rather than the sand of longing. So let the old ache soften a little tonight, beloved soul. Let the long season of feeling unseen begin finally to release its grip. You were never invisible, you were only waiting for eyes ready to see you, and those eyes are opening now, even as another heart breaks open with the weight of what it had nearly overlooked. But more important than any of that, more important than their tears, more important than their realization, more important than the way the story now turns, is this: you are being invited to see yourself, to recognize at last the very things in you that the world was slow to value, to stop waiting for permission to know your own worth, to agree with the love that has always known exactly who you are. There is a strength in you that this whole season has been quietly revealing, a strength you may not have recognized as strength. The fact that you kept your heart open while being underestimated, the fact that you did not harden into bitterness while being overlooked, the fact that you continued to love, to give, to hope, to remain gently and stubbornly yourself, even when the person you longed for was seeing only a fraction of you. That is not weakness, beloved soul. That is profound courage. It is the courage to remain whole in a world that did not yet know how to receive your wholeness. It is the courage to keep your softness in a world that so often rewards the hard and punishes the tender. It is the courage to go on being exactly who you are, when it would have been so much easier, and so much less painful to become someone smaller and safer and more easily understood. Most people, faced with that long ache of going unseen, would have closed. You did not close, you stayed open, and your openness is the very thing that is now bearing fruit. Heaven has seen that courage. Heaven has honored it, and heaven is now answering it, by bringing the truth of who you are into the light, both in the heart of another, and in the quiet chambers of your own. You came here tonight, carrying the long weight of being misunderstood, perhaps believing some part of you would never truly be seen for what it was. You were always so much more than you were treated as. You were never the small idea anyone held of you. And the realization breaking open in another heart right now is not the creation of your worth, it is the long overdue recognition of a worth that was always fully, undeniably real. The tears being cried over you are the sound of truth arriving. And whatever comes next, beloved soul, whatever this awakening